Okay, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to this second part of Katherine Schirrmacher's talks on her holistic approach to improving your climbing. Katherine, we're so pleased to have Katherine with us doing these talks. She's been climbing for like 28 years, and she's got 16 years of experience coaching. She's got her own company called Love to Climb, and we're just really pleased that she's going to impart some knowledge on us all and help us to improve. So yeah, I think I'll let Katherine do all the talking. But first of all, can I just say thank you very much to Adidas and 510 for helping us to make all of these talks happen. Without their help, this wouldn't be happening. So thank you very much. And over to you, Katherine.
Yeah, thanks, Emma, and thanks, Rebecca. And hello to everybody. Thanks so much for coming. So, yeah, this is the second workshop out of 3. And as Emma said, in my work, I always take a completely holistic approach to climbing. In the way I coach, the way I observe and assess people's climbing needs, but also in my own climbing. And so what we're doing today is we're looking at tactics and the psychological elements. And if you came last time, we were looking at technique and the physical aspects and what we did last time. And I know it was recorded, and this is recorded as well. Is I asked you questions, and I'll do the same again, so that you can score your climbing against these areas and then figure out across the board, across technique, physical, tactics, and psychological, where you're at. So where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. So what I want you to do in this whole thing, I'm going to ask you these questions, but there are a few things that I want you to think about. So first of all, I want you to think about this from the point of view of your climbing. So this isn't about anybody else's climbing. This isn't about somebody you'd like to be or where you'd like to be at with your climbing. This is about where your climbing is now. And it's also about the type of climbing you do. So whether it's trad or bouldering or sport climbing or indoor climbing or outdoors or a combination of all of it, this is about your climbing and your experience of it. So if there's a question, just think about what you would do. And also, I want you to think about your climbing, and this is hard, this is not easy, about your climbing as recently as possible. So what I want you to think about, and this is what says don't, oh yes, okay. I'll come back to what just been written in the chat there. So yeah, what you've done as recently as possible. So I know probably no one's done anything really of note in the last 2 or 3 weeks, unless you've got a home board, but you're probably not getting access to the real thing. Unless of course there's a few people in different countries, maybe you are. But think back to your climbing, if you can, to last year. So if you can think back to last autumn, brilliant. If you've got to go back to last summer, do that. If you've got to go back before that, do that. But as recently as possible. So, I mean, if you've had a huge break from climbing and you need to refer back to what you did 10 years ago, maybe use that. But if you've been climbing in the last 10 years, just try and go as recently as possible. The other thing about this, and we're going to do a bit of a warm up to help us get into this, is to try and be as non-judgmental as possible. This is about trying to figure out with your climbing what it is. That's not a good thing or a bad thing, it's just what it is right now. And that, I always in my coaching is I encourage people to try and be as non-judgmental as possible and to have a curiosity. In fact, those two elements there are part of the questions that I'll do later on. So that's where we're at. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you these questions, but there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. So I've got the two topics. I'll do tactics first and then psychological, but between each of them, I'll just do a little bit there for questions. So as Rebecca and Emma have just said, put your questions in the Q&A box. Hopefully you can see that at the bottom of your screen. There is the chat box as well, and you can chat between yourselves about that. I won't be able to keep an eye on that because that's just going to be flying. All the comments will just be flying past, but the questions, the specific questions that come up for you, put them in the Q&A. So there is that opportunity for you to ask questions. And just before we get into it, just to give you a bit more context, the last workshop that I'm going to do is going to be using all this information that you've got about your climbing for goal setting and planning. And again, it's goal setting and planning within the context of now. So there is a really great opportunity for you. I'm going to pick 2 or 3 people because I want to use your experiences and where you're at. So I'm going to ask you some questions at the end. We've got a link for you to fill in so that I can understand something about your climbing and I can figure out the goal setting around that. So it's going to be partly about that and partly about generic goal setting, how to do that. So there are opportunities for questions, but let's just get in to the main thing now. So I'm going to do something similar to what I did last time. We're going to do some breathing. Now, for those of you who know me or follow me on social media, you know that this is something that I've spent the whole of this year doing, basically, is looking into breath work. And I do it Monday to Friday online, this live thing. And it's just huge. But the thing that I want to do with it today is that I want to use it for 2 reasons. The first one is to create a line between the outside world, or I know we're all just in our worlds that we just go around and goldfish in, but if we can create a separation between that and climbing, because I want you to get into the mindset of climbing, and it's something I use and increasingly use and can be used down the line is when we get back to the real world, when you're trying to make the distinction between work and the climbing wall, or your commute and the climbing wall, or home and the crag, is to create this transition. So we're going to use breathing for that. But the other thing that breathing is so powerful for is using it to regulate the autonomic nervous system. So it's literally the most powerful thing we have, because we're all breathing and we've all got an autonomic nervous system, and we can use this breath. And since we are talking about tactics and psychological, it's massively relevant to this topic. So bear with me. So this is our warm up. So what I'd like you to do is close your eyes and just take a few breaths there. Okay, so just come into your own space, and you're going to take a really big breath in. So a really big breath in, right to the top, and just a big breath out. A really big breath in again, and a really big breath out. Just let it go. Fantastic. Right, if you now just keep your eyes closed and put your hand on your tummy. And what I want you to do now is some diaphragmatic breathing. So breathing where you feel your tummy rising and falling. So with your hand on your tummy, This is breathing as naturally as possible. You may feel that you're breathing more from the chest. If you can breathe with your tummy rising and falling, with your mouth closed, and breathing in and out through the nose, in and out through the nose with your mouth closed. So just take a few breaths there. Okay, so now we're going to breathe in for 5 and out for 5. And let's just do that for a short while. So in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5. So keep going in through the nose, 2, 3, 4, 5, out through the nose, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do it one more time. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just come back to your breath through your tummy, through diaphragmatic breathing. And we're just going to now breathe in for 5. And you're going to exhale through your mouth for 10. So in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'll do it now. And out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so just sit with yourself, hand on your tummy, just breathing through the diaphragm. So those 2 exercises there, the breathing in and out for 5, fantastic for optimizing heart rate variability. It's the perfect timing. The other thing of breathing in for 5 and out for 10, with the doubling the exhale to the inhale, that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, so it will relax you. So there's just 2 tips there that can support you now. I use them every day. It's kind of necessity for me, but definitely for your climbing. So hopefully now you're feeling settled and in the mindset of thinking about your climbing. So I'm going to share the presentation now. If I can just figure out this how to do this. So I'm going to ask you these questions, and I'm going to go through the questions with you, and I'm going to propose various, just to give you a bit of thought, because you're going to score yourselves 1 to 5 on each question. And you're going to add up at the end what you come up with. So I'll just throw some suggestions out to maybe direct your thinking, but this is just for you to put that all together. Now, this has been done, so we've got, each section has got 5 questions, but I've got a bonus question in there because actually some of my clients who are here tonight, you've already had this questionnaire, so it's just an extra question. So you can either just add that on at the end with the scoring, or you can just substitute depending on what you want to come up with at the end. So let's have a go at the questions. Okay, share. Right, I'll just put that in onto that. So, okay, so let's talk about tactics first. Yeah, so tactics, I mean, in many ways with tactics, a lot of this is psychological because you're using your brain to think through how you're going to, make decisions regarding optimizing you're climbing on any given day. So here we go. Here's the first question. I should just say, hopefully by now you've got a pen and a piece of paper. I'll just give you a moment if you haven't got one. Basically writing down a load of numbers, and I think this has been shared with you by when you signed up for this. So this is the first question. I'll read it out. So I always make time for warming up, and I'm confident in my warm-up routine. There's actually a couple of things there, isn't there? Just about putting some time aside, but also you know what you're doing with your warm-up. So 1.4. Now, warming up is boring, so you don't bother. You just get on your climb. Now, it's interesting. When I started off trad climbing, I never used to warm up. I just get on my route. I did that for years. So I think at the climbing wall, it's a lot easier, and depending at the crag, but still I had the attitude that warming up was boring. So I don't do that anymore, but it is easy to have that one. So you may, for 2 points, you may think, I mean to, but I often forget. So maybe you do know the principles of it, but somehow you didn't do one. It didn't seem to happen. So number 3, so 3 points for sometimes. So with warming up there, does that depend on who you're with? Do you warm up with some people but not others? Do you find yourself thinking, oh, they just want to hurry up, so I won't really do it? Or do you do it when you're indoors, but you don't do it when you're outdoors? Or in fact, you do it better when you do it outdoors because you walk into the crag, or perhaps you walk in, but you don't do stretching, or, you know, what does that sometimes mean? And so 4 is mostly, it's just an extension of that. So, you know, you do it mostly, but or are you, for 5 points, absolutely, I've got a really good warm up, I adapt it for whoever I'm with, and wherever I am, you do it. So what do you get for that? So next question. Oh gosh. I've done something here where the screen is covering up the top of the question, but let me just see. I've got it written down here. Okay. So when standing on the ground, I can visualize how my body will feel and move when climbing. So that's an interesting one there. It's talking about this concept of visualization, but whether you want to call it visualization or whether you're just trying to imagine, you can imagine your body climbing. You can look at the rock and you can, or the wall or whatever it is, and you have a sense of how you're going to move over that surface. So for 1 point, no clue, don't know where to start. So it's just never thought about it. Literally can't visualize myself climbing at all. You can't pick, you can see yourself on the ground, but you can't put yourself on the wall. Maybe it's a kind of. Maybe you can imagine where your hands will go, but you can't think where your feet will go. Maybe it's a sometimes. Maybe you can do it at the climbing wall, but you find it harder on rock. Or maybe on some rock you find that you really understand that rock, but other types of rock you just doesn't make sense to you. Maybe it's most of the time that you really are feeling pretty good there, but there are times that you can't make that connection. Or for 5 points, always you can really picture yourself. So this is a tough skill. This is not easy, but see what comes up with you. And don't forget, if you've got a question on any of this, just put it in the Q&A box. So next one, I have a good pre-climb routine. So that is maybe brushing holds, getting your gear all sorted, racking up, making sure you're not carrying stuff you don't need, getting your ropes in order, putting the mats in the right place so you're not going to get your ankle caught up. Maybe you're asking your partner to stand in the right place while they spot you. You get it all sorted out. And buddy checks. Do you make sure you do buddy checks before you leave the ground? So there's a really good organized system before you leave the ground. So for 1 point, no, you just get going. Don't bother with any of that. You just sort of start climbing. And again, just think, if you're a boulderer, that is a lot simpler because there's less gear. But still, you know, just even looking at the climb, do you even look and see what you're going to do? So 2, it depends on who I'm with. Sometimes it's tricky. Some people are like just slapdash and just moving really quickly, and it's tricky to get that routine. Other people, they're really, you know, sure and going through all the systems. So, and that helps you. So 3, sometimes, and that might come into 2. It might depend on who you're with. It might depend where you are. And maybe you are more confident with a pre-climb routine in bouldering, but less confident with a routine in, say, outdoor bouldering or sport climbing or something. 4 points mostly. And again, think across all of your climbing. So again, is it certain aspects, or is it, no, I'm pretty confident, but every so often you think, yeah, I didn't check that bit out properly, or yeah, to be honest, we didn't do a buddy check, and somehow they're undoing a knot in the middle of B lane, which can happen. Or for 5, always, wherever I am, whoever I'm with. So full marks for that one. So next question. When I get to a rest on a climb, I figure out the next few moves and settle my thoughts. Now, there's 2 aspects there, really. So one is that when you get to a rest, and this could be on a boulder problem or it could be on a route, do you use that rest? So use that rest tactically. So not using the rest to just shake out. I mean, that's partly tactical, of course. But say you're not pumped, you're not tired, but you're using that rest to think and plan and think about what's coming next, and maybe even do some diaphragmatic breathing to settle your thoughts and think. So for 1 point, rests are boring, I just keep going. And you know, I have met people that are like, no, I never rest at the rest. What's the point in that? So do need to take your rests and use them. 2, I rest, but only because I think I should. And I've seen that a lot. People do, but they don't know quite what to do at the rest. 3 points, sometimes. And again, you know, what does it depend on? Maybe when you go trad climbing, there's loads of ledges and grooves and places to get into, or perhaps when you're, you know, any kind of route climbing. But when you're indoors, you just pile up the route. You just go from the bottom to the top. There's no ledge to stand on. There's no obvious rest, but you don't use it tactically. 4, mostly. 5, yes, always. I know how to best use a rest. Now remember, this is on your climbing. This is on the climbing that you do. So yeah, you may see Adamondra resting on a type of crimp that we can never use in our entire lives. So we're not thinking about that. We're thinking about the ones that you can use for your own climbing. So next question. I know exactly how and when to change pace. So this is the speed of movement when climbing. So maybe for some of you, you're like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what that means. Other people might think, well, what does that mean? So I guess if you think of walking, just to explain it, if somebody was to walk slowly, they would have a slow pace. But if they walked fast, they would be changing their pace. And if we were standing on the opposite side of the road and we never met them, never seen them, we could definitely see a change in their pace. So one, you know, can you literally, do you have the physicality and the technique to be able to speed up. So if I was standing at the other side of the climbing wall and I watched you climbing, would I see a difference in your pace? And why is this important? When you need to move fast through a steep, difficult sequence, or when you need to slow right down on a really intricate technical bit so that you are really precise, or maybe you're moving swiftly, holding on lightly to conserve energy, and then you get to a rest and then you fire up. So for 1 point, no, I have one pace. Now I've put slow there, but I've also seen people that are really, really fast. So maybe you just climb like you climb, but it's just one pace, and you kind of know it's one pace, and nothing changes. For 2, maybe. Now that's an interesting one, what maybe means, because we can mentally change pace, which is really important. But do you physically change pace? So can you physically do it? Because you can think, right, I'm going up a gear, but actually if anyone was to watch, you can't see a difference. So 3, sometimes. Again, that might depend where you are, what kind of climbing you're doing. Maybe it's automatic for you to charge up a big overhang. Maybe that slows you right down. Maybe you're really comfortable doing it on slabs and going really carefully. But if you have to move really quickly and confidently up a slab, you can't. For mostly, and 5, always, in all circumstances, you have full control over your pace. So what's coming up for you there? Right, next one. So this is the bonus question. So this wasn't in the, this isn't what we sent out. So for anybody who wants another one, you've got one here and you can substitute or add in. So I will organise my climbing day so that I'll get optimal conditions on my climb. So what I'm talking about there with conditions, sun, I mean, I don't know, I'm terrible in the sun. There's just like absolutely hopeless. That doesn't work. And it's still, I make that mistake. It doesn't change. I just can't deal with it. So, are you really strict? Sometimes it takes huge amounts of confidence to say to your friend, I'm going to wait half an hour till it's gone in the shade. Or, do you think, yeah, it is really windy and blustery and I'm not comfortable with this, but I'm doing it anyway. Have you even thought about this? Are you trying your hardest boulder problem in the middle of August when doing it in March might be better? It's thinking, and I know climbers get really fixated on conditions, but it is a big deal. So where do you stand on conditions? I have definitely been in one. My early trad climbing, I used to get on wet routes the whole time. It was actually ridiculous because I would fall off most of them. So I don't advise that, but now I just climb regardless, whatever the weather, whether it's, blowing a gale or full sun, I just get on with it. 2, I think so. Maybe have you got a full handle on what conditions are? Do you allow yourself conditions as a thing? 3, sometimes. 4, mostly. And yes, in all circumstances. This is a real balance, because I do know people who are really fixated on it, and actually they can be slightly irritating climbing partners because they're so obsessed with it and they won't compromise. And I think there's a real balance, because whether we're bouldering or route climbing, we need to climb and think about the other person. So how do you manage that? Is it a tricky topic with your climbing partner or not? So that's it for the tactics question. I'm just going to move this on and I'm going to stop share. So this is your opportunity now. If you may be storing the questions up in your head, but this is also an opportunity now just to ask some questions about these topics. So put your questions in there now, but we've got a couple already. So Claire, you've written down, I struggle with route reading and remembering sequences when red pointing. Do you have any tips for this, please? Okay, so a few things coming up with that. When you are working a route, how long do you actually spend absorbing the information from a route? So it's quite interesting that when I've watched really, really good people doing this, they spend quite a long time, and it takes a lot of confidence to say to your partner, just hold me there. And you really, really take your time. And I even think, coming back to the diaphragmatic breathing, of just like, okay, I'm going to absorb, take my time and absorb. So I think that's the first thing, is to really take your time when you're hanging off bolts and figuring out and brushing holds and looking at all the footholds. So take your time. And in terms of remembering it, there's a few techniques with this. So, and this is something to work with. You've just got to figure this out. So you could draw it. You could literally, you could take a picture of it with your phone, and then you can draw it. A really, really good example of this, if you've seen the film, yeah, somebody's just put there's a big difference between red pointing and on-sighting. Absolutely. But yes, specifically with red pointing, where you have seen it in advance. If you've seen the film of Margot Hayes, when she went on that spree of red pointing those 9A pluses, when she was working, I do get mixed up with biography and realization, the name, but the route at Sayou's, the 9A plus there, she drew a big long piece of paper that she had on the wall, and she drew it, and she drew every handhold, she drew every foothold, and she put every rest in and every clipping position. Now, I've tried that myself. I've struggled with that. It doesn't seem to work fully. I've also, you can also, it depends on how your brain takes information in. Also, writing it down, and maybe speaking it into your phone. You can actually try and, whilst you're there, okay, by the second clip there is. So, just use all these different techniques. So, Bryony, how would you apply the question about resting on a route to bouldering? Yeah, well, obviously bouldering's different. It depends how long the boulder problem is. I think that sometimes on boulder problems, you're not getting a full rest because you're only in a 10 move thing, but you can also find points where you get like mini shakes. It's a strategic mini shakes. As you're reaching up to the next hold, you do a mini shake. But I mean, the thing about bouldering, I think maybe it's a bit old-fashioned. I always wear a chalk bag. I'm not with this modern put it on the ground thing. But having it in mind that if it's a longer boulder problem, that you are thinking about the chalking up and what's happening. So it does depend on the boulder problem, and it will only be a semi-rest. But if it's a breath, if it's a chalk up, if it's a mini shake, that would absolutely work. So how would you go about visualizing a climb? So there's a couple of methods that you can use. I mean, first of all, what's massively important with the visualizing is you have to get your physiological state into a point where you can think. So again, I'm always this breathing thing. I'm a massive fan. So if you're visualizing from a point of stress and anxiety, it's going to be really, really hard. So you need to take breaths, listen to music, do something that's going to relax your system. And then there's two methods. One is looking, and you can imagine your body, yourself in it, climbing. Some people do it where they're imagining watching themselves on TV. So it really depends. If you're going to get into the process of visualizing, is actually getting underneath the climb and, like, you know, feeling it and standing underneath it and really getting involved with it works. I think you can do all kinds of things where you imagine you stand there, you've got a friend and they're timing you. So they're timing you and you work through the whole climb, and you really work through the rest, the clips, the moves, where you're going to take a breather, and then, you know, really picture yourself, and then your friend has timed you, and then you climb it, and you start to sit, and then you find out how long you actually took to climb it and how it all matches up what you imagine you were going to do with what actually happened. Just looking at the time here, so the other section. I can't visualize myself on the rock at all. Has my answer to the last one, has that just helped at all? If you've got any more on that, just so I can move on. Do you have any particular tips on how to get better at changing pace, other than just generally getting fitter, stronger, better technique? I've got a really good one. I've just started working on this. I'm always experimenting with any number of things, but here's one, and I started trying this just before Christmas. Metronome. Get a metronome app. It's all, you just type metronome into Google, and you know the metronomes that musicians use, and put it on a slow pace and try and move every hand, foot, and go with the pace of the metronome, and see what you can get away with as it speeds up. So when the metronome is tick, 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 actually they don't go tick, they make another noise, but you know what I mean, versus tick, 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 really hard. So nobody climbs in this regimented tick, tick, tick way, but it's a way, and it's fun. It's really fun. It's not easy, but every hand and every foot matches the metronome. So Jane, what would you recommend to improve the on-sighting game through tactics? Okay, so the big thing that's jumping out there is splitting the route up into sections. So if that is at the climbing wall, or if that is outside, there's a way to make sections. So outside it's a lot easier because usually there's natural features. There's usually a groove or a ledge or something that splits it all up. At the climbing wall, less so. You won't get the features, but you'll get a massive hold. There will be a good hold somewhere. So try and split it up. And then, rather than thinking of the whole thing, just split it up. And that suddenly feels a lot easier, more manageable to look at where the hands are, look at where the feet are, look at where the moves are. And then when you get to the next rest, you repeat the process. Yeah, okay. So I've got to think, right, we've got need to move on to the next section. Yeah, 10 past. Okay. Okay, but I'll just actually quickly answer this, because I do think this is really important. Somebody's just said, I don't feel that I'm good enough to worry about a lot of these things and don't want to waste other people's time or take too much time. Does it make a lot of difference at lower grades, especially trad 2? 1,050,000% yes. You will see such big differences in your climbing. But with this topic, I think, I can't quite remember my questions, will come up in the next section, is that I strongly believe that nobody has more rights on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever day of the week it is to that bit of rock or that day out. So I'd really encourage you to allow yourself, you know, to really give yourself full permission there, because it's, you know, for trad climbing, it's all about tactics. It really is. It really is hugely. So I definitely encourage you to do that. Oh gosh. Right. Perhaps I've got Emma, another one. What would you say a simple but effective warm-up for? Okay, so this is a great question. It's going to sound like I'm, do you know what? On my website, lovetoclimb.co.uk, if you fancy visiting that, I've got a whole blog on warming up with videos. So I've got it all the way through from pulse raiser through to joint rotation and easy climbing and all those elements. So we haven't got time. Let's see what we get to at the end. But I have got a whole blog on that with videos. So if you want to check that out. Okay, let's move on to the next bit. Share. Wait a minute, we're still on tactics. We need to move that down. Why is that like that? Do you want to save? Oh, crikey, cancel. I don't know why this isn't. Oh, okay, psychological, it's doing it. Okay, next questions then, let's go. Okay, so this is the mental side. You see that the tactical thing has a mental element. You can't fully separate it. So here we go. I find it easy to set climbing goals and enjoy the process of reaching them. Now, this is, again, I am not quite so good on my questions here. There's two very distinct parts there, actually. Setting climbing goals and being comfortable with the process. So the process is the time scales, what you've got to do. I think at the moment, we're totally stuck in process. We've got to somehow find some enjoyment in this process if you are managing to climb or train or do something. So right then, in terms of that then, climbing goals process. So one, no, you're just trying to get to the top of the climb. You're not thinking any more than here's a climb, I'm just doing this one. So two, it's uncomfortable. Maybe you don't really know how to set goals, or you've got one but you don't really know, you know, the process of how to get there is uncomfortable to you. So 3 points for sometimes. Again, you know, does this depend on, well, it's fine if you've got a holiday booked, or, you know, or it depends if you've got a friend you can do it with, you've got a partnership. What is that sometimes, or mostly? Or for 5, yes, absolutely used to this. You know how to set a goal and you've got a comfortable process to get there. Next one, when I stand underneath a climb, I'm confident that I will be able to give it my full effort. Now this is huge. So that, you know, this idea of your full effort, that is your full physical and mental effort. Full effort isn't necessarily arriving at the top totally pumped. It's just you've used your full brain to get there, and maybe on some climbs it's you really got through those sections and you gave it your all. But the point is, you can stand underneath and climb and know you can do that. So for 1 point, far from it, you know, just not feeling confident. And don't forget, this is on, think about across the board with your climbing, not just on that one climb that felt awful, but across all of the climbs that you approach. So 2, needs work. 3, sometimes. 4, mostly. 5, always. So this is a, you know, is it certain climbs? Is it certain techniques? Is it certain crags? Is it with certain people and climbing partners you feel more confident than others? Or is your climbing completely set up across the board where you are everything, your gear, your systems, your friends, everything supports maximum confidence? Or what's missing? What makes something into a sometimes or a mostly? Okay, we've got to tackle this one. Falling off is not an issue for me. So this is obviously huge. Now I just want to add in, before we go into this, falling off. Sometimes it's not all right to fall off. So I'd be worried if somebody said, yeah, when I go soloing, I'm not worried if I fall off. Like, I don't want anybody soloing and lobbing off the top of Stanage. But if, you know, and sometimes in trad climbing, especially very featured climbs with cracks and corners, it's kind of not all right to fall off. But if you know that you are on a bit of climb on a rock or indoors, and this can be for bouldering as well, when you've got gear, spotters and mats, if you know that it is all right to fall off, but you've got trouble with it, that's what this question's about. So for 1 point, my worst nightmare, no way. 2, needs work. 3, sometimes. 4, mostly. And 5, actually, you're totally into falling off. It gives you a thrill. Now, you know, again, with these middle grounds of 2, 3, and 4, you know, is it, I'm fine towards the end of the year, but at the beginning of the year when I've not done much, it's hard. Is it all right with some people, but not all right with others? Is it certain rock types or certain angles that terrify you, but other angles you're fine with? What comes up for you there? So, okay, so again with falling off. So when I fall off, and this can be a route or a boulder problem, I'm always curious as to the reasons why. So what can happen, it certainly happened to me, is you beat yourself up and you get cross with yourself, and actually you're not curious, you're just pissed off. So, you know, that gets a 1. But if you can find a way of, now what went on there? I've got to admit that I did hesitate at that point, or I did waste energy down there, or yeah, I just didn't see that foothold. You know, so what, you know, this curiosity. So 1, no, I beat myself up. 2, I try, but it's hard. 3, sometimes. 4, mostly. Or 5, always. It's what I enjoy about climbing. When I go bouldering, that's one of the things I particularly like about bouldering with friends. I like that exchanging of ideas, but you know, it's not, I don't always see it in all aspects of my climbing. So right, okay, so here we go. I trust myself and my ability to make decisions. So this is interesting. Climbing is a decision-making sport, and it's everything from what route to pick, what crag to pick, what foothold to pick, what handhold to pick, where to clip from, here, there. Do you trust yourself to make those decisions? Now, again, this is based on your experience of climbing. So I'm not suggesting anybody here knows how to on-site the crux of a 9A+. This is on your route, your boulder problem. So 1, I don't know what I'm doing. No clue. I just don't trust myself. 2, I try, but this feels hard. 3 sometimes, 4 mostly, 5 always. I trust my judgment. Yeah, I mean, judgment, decision making, it's, you know, a lot of this is gained over time, but just, you know, trusting yourself is another thing again. So bonus question. I have full confidence in my climbing partners. Sharp intake of breath. So you sat on your own, possibly. This is a tricky topic, and I have, personally speaking, not always had confidence in my climbing partners, and that little voice that's like, I just don't really like their B-lane, you know, or do you have climbing partners where you totally trust them and they trust you and you're a great partnership? So one, maybe no, you don't have a regular climbing partner, and I know that's disrupted completely at the moment. I've not even seen my regular climbing partners for weeks, let alone gone climbing with them. 2, kind of. 3, sometimes. 4, pretty good. 5, absolutely. So where do you stand on that? I think this is one of the biggest untalked things about in climbing, is that relationship with your climbing partner. It counts for so much. So this is something to think about in lockdown, where you stand with that and making new connections, or rekindling old friendships. So right, let's just quickly move on. So perhaps you're adding your stuff up as you go along. Actually, maybe I should do the questions first. 5 minutes. These questions, let's just see what comes up now, and then we'll go back to the Q&A box. So basically, 0 to 5, you absolutely know what you need to work on. If tactics or psychological are coming up 0 to 5, if you make an effort in that area, you're going to have huge gains. 6 to 10, you've got again a good opportunity to make a big difference. 11 to 15, it's about consistency. Something's there, but it needs to be more consistent. 16 to 20, fantastic. So I think it's just about, you know, working with the details there to get that to a super strength. And if you've got 21 to 25, honestly, that is fantastic. You're doing really, really well there. So I'm going to stop the share there, and let's just look. So it's 25 past. Let's look at some questions there. What if your climbing goal is having fun? Honestly, if you've been following me on social media recently, I just think that's it. So I shared this quote that Shauna Coxey put up, that she's soon to be Olympian, World Cup champion. She said, and I heard her say, she shared something else in her Instagram story just this week. She said, I prioritize happiness, because if I'm not happy, I can't win. Now that is so powerful. This week in her story, she had a question and answer thing going on in those boxes you have on Instagram stories, and somebody said, what is the most important thing to you in training? And she said, having fun. So it's, to me, I feel that is a bottom line. So I think making all your climbing experiences as fun as possible, it will get the best out of your climbing. I mean, my business is called Love to Climb, don't forget. So I think that is absolutely vital. So Jane, what would you recommend to compartmentalize your relationship from your climbing performance if your regular climbing partner is your life partner? I think this is a really, really good question. I think it is very, very common, and I think it's tricky. And I think for me, life and climbing is so wrapped up, and this ability to have a conversation with your partner about what you both want out of climbing is absolutely vital. So to have that conversation is vital. So you could either decide that you're not going to climb together, and that I have made that decision myself, or only in certain circumstances. But when I'm at my limit, it doesn't happen. But there is a common place that we meet. So can you have a place where, via a conversation, where you both meet in the middle, and maybe you decide that climbing on a wonderful scramble in North Wales or something meets in the middle. But I don't know about your climbing, you like bouldering and he likes sport climbing, and that's not going to go together. I think it's okay, and I think it's healthy, but I think it needs a conversation. So that's the biggest thing, and I know that's not easy. But I also know that in climbing partners who are really important to me, not in relationships, is that having that conversation with them about what you want to get out of your summer's climbing. It's interesting and it's difficult, and I see it a lot where people say it's the conversation. I know what I want, but I struggle with the conversation. But I think that when it comes from a real heartfelt place, then it's understood. So Anna, I'm pretty confident while bouldering, even falling and so on, but I'm terrified lead climbing. I just can't. I really want to improve there, but I have had the experience that the more I push myself, the more I hate it. Do you have any advice on this? So I think this actually comes back to the person that said fun. So I think finding a place in your climbing that it is fun. Now, you know about this before you even go to the crag. So when you're dreading something before it has happened, that is really difficult, and it's why even do it? And yesterday, I don't know if you came to Rebecca Williams's talk, she was talking about the negative thought spiraling that can happen, but she shared a slide, and at the top it said, remember your why. So I completely agree with what Rebecca's saying. So I think it's to give yourself a break, do the types of climbing you really, really enjoy. But if there really is something you don't like, don't do it until there's something creeping in that says, I think I want to try and do this. So giving yourself permission and giving yourself a break is really, really important. So actually, blimey, that brings us up to 29 minutes past 8. So that is very good timing. Okay, so actually brings me back to the last bit. So moving on then, as I said, the next workshop, so actually very quickly, because I think it's all right, we've got a little bit of time. What I'd like you to do is chat. If you came to this workshop, and look, we're obviously here, this one and last one, have you got last week, 2 weeks ago, have you got the scores from it? Because I'm really interested now if everybody just types in the chat what the topic has come up for you that you need to work on. I'm going to look in, dare to go in this chat box, not the Q&A. What's coming up for you in terms of the thing? And if you've only just done this one, maybe adding everything up. Okay, so we've got tactics, psychological, confident, physical, psychological, tactics. Okay, loads on psychological, technique. I think unhooking this psychological is really, really powerful. If you can make gains on that, I think whilst this period of time at the moment is really difficult, it's really challenging, this is the one area we can make gains in. So decision making, learning to trust ourselves, confidence can make a big difference. Okay, then somebody said they're across the board, good on all of them. Okay, just consistent throughout, which is really good. That's really, really good. So interesting just to find out there. So what I want to do then for next time, I haven't quite planned it out because I want to do this around you. I don't want to just deliver, this is how you set a goal, because it's actually quite a complex process. It's very, very personal as well, and it doesn't have to be about numbers and grades. But what I want to do is for you to send your questions in, and I've got a Google form, and Rebecca and Emma are going to share this Google form. Can you? It's in the chat box now. So what I'd like you to do is to send me in your questions. So I've just got a quick screen share on this, so you can. Oh gosh, screen share. Share. Just so you've got. Why did this do this last time? Oh, is it coming? I don't know. I can't make it. Right, just getting through it. Right, okay. So this is the what's going to come up. I'd like you to send me your questions based on the information you've got from what we've done this week and before about setting goals, how to prioritize what to work on, and how to work on one specific area. You may have another question that comes up, but what I want to do is pick 2 or 3 people that I can take your real information, and it helps me plan, and then I can work around that. But I also want to do something where I give you a couple of methods for how you can set goals, because there's a few ways you can actually look at this. So that link in Google Forms is there. So just fill it in. Okay.
Brilliant. We're there. Thank you so much, Catherine. That was absolutely brilliant. Really, really good, and loads of questions coming in. So I think, I think you might get inundated with questions on that Google form. Just so you know, if you do fill in the Google form, we're not going to share your information wider than Katherine and Women's Climbing Symposium. That won't go anywhere, and it'll be deleted after we've used it for the purposes of next week's talk with Katherine. The other thing is she might choose you to focus on specifically you. So if you don't want her to do that during next week's talk, then don't fill it in.
Next week technically being in 3 weeks as well.
Yeah, sorry. The next talk. That's great. Thank you so much. It's been great, and thanks to everyone for getting involved, because it's not the same if we don't get questions in, and we've had loads there and loads of chat going on in the chat box, which is great. There's things still flying up there now. Katherine, everyone's saying thanks.
So yeah, I've got it on the side of my screen.
Yeah. Thanks again to Adidas.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. We'll hopefully see you at something again soon. Take care. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.